The blessing is the moment of sun-splashed brilliance, the walking in by chance at the time of greatest need. The blessing is swallows alive from Africa, cavorting in English sky. The blessing is a surprise, like luminescence seen from a boat at night between islands, and the way it rises on the swell, the shallows all aglow with it, the tide a woman's sigh. The blessing doesn't choose, its substance is just bestowed. We have no right. The blessing is the rustling of willows when dawn comes and mayflies love and die. We are much in need of blessing. Its essence will not distill. It evaporates if we try. It's lurking in shadows. It skulks in hollows. It weeps, yet bids us fly. The poor in spirit. To scratch together a life well lived on dusty ground takes a certain sort of impoverishment, the kind that finds something to cherish in an empty purse, something to relish in stale bread, something to hoard in a handful of memories, and in a time-worn lover, something to adore. You can't buy that sort of poverty by making donations. You get it by making do when you think you are abounding. It's the moment when a hungry child feeds the last crumb to the same thrush that has sung all morning. A hard thing to do, but easier for her than for the man whose camel buckles its shuddering knees and balks at the needle's eye. The dead weight of his purse bears the brunt of cursing. He burns with an avarice too hot to take the blessing. They that mourn, time does not heal them. There is no regeneration of the amputated limb. They go on with the blank companionship of an empty space. It follows them, blinks out, reappears in old accustomed places, sits itself in that particular chair, warms hands at the cold fireplace it lit and kindled every day in life, blindly flips the pages of its favourite magazines, leaves spoons in teacups as it always did, folds back the pages of its favourite book, disturbs the dust in the attic where it planed wood and puffed its pipe, leaves the smell of it lingering on stairs. Time does not heal. It wears thin until its gossamer is so stretched that the veil of life and death turns translucent, and even the embittered start to see angels. The meek. To be meek is but a moment. Tomorrow we'll be cats. We began blind, became blear-eyed, licked into living. Nails thin as whiskers, our legs barely extended beyond our bellies. We clamoured for nipple comforts, clamoured over each other, claimed our own stakes in the struggle to be nurtured, luxuriated in her surfeits of calmness, rolled all our softness into one huddle, muled, bundled, suckled, curled, and slept. Now our claws are retractable, and our eyes gleam with adventure, see in colour. We climb walls, clamp our jaws around each other, leave the mewling to our mother, worrying, cajoling, herding us together. We flex our instincts, scowl, wet our claws by habit. She sets us free. We are ready to inherit. they which do hunger and thirst. I could really get my teeth into righteousness, as into a hunk of freshly risen bread, could drink deeply of its lifeblood, were it not for that old weevil, self, spoiling the whole repast. Watch closely how it channers through those yeasty holes in the still warm body of the loaf, half blindly awaiting its own metamorphosis into a black beetle. No doubt it leaves a trail of bran-coloured dung on which I could choke. No, I am not righteous, nor would I have it conferred on me by grace, faith, or any other substitute for a wholesome meal. The grub will find the centre and drown in blood. Love, lust, covetousness, desire. Do your worst. At least I'll live. I'll hunger and I'll thirst. The merciful. She could strain it through a stocking, as though she were making jelly out of rose hips. All those troublesome hairs need not get between her teeth, the little sympathies that really give her the pip. She will turn her lip in a dimpled smirk of impatience, squeeze out the homogeneous pink jollop in measured doses. The smell of rendered mercy fills her kitchen. Its cloying residue solidifies on the lips of pots, drips down the outsides of jars, congealed by a certain cold precision. So her sweetness, all too keen to bless, attracts bright wasps of obsequiousness. The pure in heart. The pure in heart show it by that look of complete dependence, with upcast eyes seeking assurance from the great arbitrator of fate and bestower of bones. The pure in heart quake at the slightest glimpse of anger, take others' sins upon themselves, and only steal from bins because they hate to waste discarded trimmings. The pure in heart will stay if you train them. The pure in heart wear bells and collars, feign delight. The pure in heart, put out at night, are relatively patient, spend their leisure meekly marking trees. The pure in heart appease, wheedle on their knees. The pure in heart looks upward, and she sees. The peacemakers. Often they are inanimate things, tumble-down stiles on hedged horizons, trees on the verge of leaf, unmarked paths on the silhouetted earth, low bands of backlit cloud, vapor trails even, sun-dazed, like moths at a flame, and the way stars fade into existence on dusk walks as the sky turns oyster-coloured, badgers awakening, oak trees beckoning the early owl. The peace is a quiet communion with all of these, paced out in measured strides, and remembered conversations with beloved friends whose joys, through the act of walking, gush forth as poems. The persecuted. It's odd how we always resemble our tormentors in all the most important particulars. Some of us are predators by birth and instinct, so brutes with shotguns shoot us down, impale us on wires, the barbs stuck deep into our skins. Others are opportunists, and our kin, those rank capitalists who steal under the slick guise of industry, do us in with mouse-traps, racks, crucifixes. Then there are the ones who touch such an exquisite nerve you can't resist the urge to slap, though you have been arch little parasites yourselves and wouldn't be missed. Last, there are some who live on streets, whom you begrudge the kingdom and your satin sheets. Peace. Peace is a pool without a ripple, reflecting an aeroplane filled with souls. Peace is the stick that's snagged beneath a cloud, the reeds which hold the scribble of a vapour trail. Peace is the bridge which breaks and stays whole. Peace is the bubble under melting ice. It widens with time, trees waver under water. Peace is the bow of a boat when people are sleeping and the willow is a whisper and an echo. Peace is in the fish that rises among water lilies and stars. The sun is peace when it spills outwards in its white largesse. You are to peace a breathing little blessing. Peace is in the seeing. Peace is in the reeds themselves, not fighting storms, nor death, but wildly being. Vastness. It's a hymn in plain chant, this sonorous arch in stone. We stand inside the bellows of a great organ, or within the gasping lungs of praise. In this the cathedral echoes the grove's choir of birds, the wide air a-tremble over their little larynxes, as though they cram into a pinprick all that vastness. Silence. Silence is the hand which is still outstretched when the clamouring, helpful voices fade. Silence does nothing dramatic, doesn't leap up and solve anything. It waits, and when the last attempt at rescue has failed, it steps in, doesn't say a word. Here we are flailing, and it has fanned out like a lace-fine vault above our heads. Silence is the colours when all other windows are shattered and emit only wind. Silence echoes. Silence is the dark red door down a passage which has no end. Faith. If you poked my mustard seed into this mountain deep as your finger would go, it might take root, but there would be nothing seismic, no landslide or cascade of shale, no pyroclastic flow, no blast of Krakatoa. Fresh roots would worm their way between stones, sending out a fuzz of whiteness. Stem and leaves would push aside a sand grain, multiply a little, thrust out buds and cruciform flowers, yellow as pollen. On sunny days the air would grow pungent, and then the petals would drop, and blackening pods would thrust themselves between curling sepals before cracking open. If you poked my mustard seed into this mountain, no sky would fall. Hope. If hope grows no higher than the hung heads of snowdrops, it will be sufficient. Petals will be weighed down with jewels, leaves brought low by lozenges of imprisoned light, and even grass blades will sag under random scatterings of crystal. I will stoop to find hope where it has been overlooked, the knees of my trousers soaked. I will lean on my elbows to catch a better glimpse of the dewfall and of all this lowly, unheeded, cool and glistening hope. Love. Love coiled up with herself in the corner, where there was a glow in the hearth, licked her own tail, and fell asleep. A lintel collapsed, a rafter fell. Faith kept the shingles from cascading. Hope filled the scar where the sky was bleeding through. Love luxuriated, spread her legs, turned her belly upward. Love was whiskers and warmth. Leaves fell, branches gnarled, rooks deserted nests. Then nothing was awake. Love turned, purred. The fireplace spat a spark. The glass grew dark. Conformable. How do death and resurrection look, glimpsed through a web of net, when the text itself is subject to decay? The house was built on rock, so a white dust took it from the inside, choked the charity out of every nook and cranny, left it to the mice. Slugs invaded the damper places, made layered holes in old directories. But mould didn't eat the text. Sunlight dried it, turned it friable as flour, waiting to be blown away by a warm draught on the last day. And great was the fall of it. Given time and wind and sea, all rock is sand, or sogs away to clay. Bricks melt down like sucked sweets, lozenge-shaped. Roots stick tongues through them and lick out longer, let them hang suspended between earth and water. Pipes from the privy start lurching out of soil, eruptions in terracotta. The living tree which brought the whole lot down keeps growing, sends out white filaments, hopeful rootlets, drinking and withering in brine. Time is victor. The sea slurps. He spoke with authority, not as the scribes. We build on stone, and stone succumbs. They toil not, neither do they spin, yet the lilies upstage Solomon in a lung full of scent, and pollen clagging on the ends of anthers, the stigmas dangling like clappers, petals peppered with a spectrum of lusts, a scattering of gametes blown by angels. There is an entire architecture of sunlight, singing psalms through the cellulose, glancing off architraves, describing Gothic arches through symmetries of plant tissue and stone. The light is wanton, voluptuous. Lilies vex the prudish with their gift of sex. There is a friend who sticketh closer. Why, when you enter the room, does my heart turn warm and red, and all those other words grow muffled, as under snow? Why do leaf veins seem to swell with green blood, and the forms of all things become rounder and aglow? Why do the shadow and the echo gain such sudden substance? Why does water seem to flow more slowly, birds to consider more closely the cadences of their songs? Why is there sudden gratuitous artistry in the dried sloe, the crow feather, the sunlight and cedar cone? Why does the pulse of all run cold when I turn to go? When I step over the rod, why does a poem fall from me like a child of Arian Road? A curate's egg. 3 genteel taps with a spoon, and the shell is decapitated, smeared with a slick of albumen. I could insist on politeness, hold back my gorge, mop up the noisome yolk with a slice of toast, chew and swallow as I catch my breath, wash it down with tea. But there is the rest of it to consider. It will take 4 mouthfuls at least. Strung out from within it, the twisted rope of chalaza will dangle from my spoon, and a clot of yellow will gloop its way down the handle. Perseverance is a virtue. I weigh it up against honesty, look greenly at the plate. This breakfast is a parable, good in parts, like life, like health, like love, like human hearts. The spinning. It's not a slowing down so much as a stretching out of what might be last moment. No one shouts. You notice how the centripetal force folds your thoughts outwards like an opening rose. You detach from things as mystics do, if only for one long instant. Remember the scenes that put you here, how you used to clamber up the gum tree in the garden, and lurched but never fell, how drawing lent you patience, and birds taught you to feel, how you held your baby swaddled and watched a gush of blood, how you lay, when you were older, in the meadow by the bridge with the rabbits creeping nearer, how her arm was cool against your cheek, and you nestled closer. She didn't recoil. You did no more to encroach. It seems important now your soul has gone back into the spinning. You're made of leaves and soil that hurl against a windscreen. There is no flesh or form, but the bleeding at that birth, and the coolness of her arm. Doubt. So Thomas thrust his hand into the side of Christ. Blue light radiated, struck into the heart of time. That was when the doubting truly began, that this was not eternal. The cedars would turn to swirls of light, the waters would become heavens, the mountains would be made of creeping things and things that flew merely to fall down, until only this man was left standing. So Thomas pulled it back out of the thick red gunk of life, looked at it, felt faint. There was an ascension amongst the tracery. The sky broke into branches, and women and men became birds. The sun shot through it as though piercing acres of refracting glass. And Thomas turned to Magdalene and said, I still don't believe it. You try to make sense of it. You saw it first.